Welcome to another edition of the 186Kloud Show. The set of supplier interviews where we get to hear and understand what's hot and not so hot, what's new and trending, plus what might matter as you look to the technologies and suppliers that could make a positive impact on your business. So join us on this week's 186Kloud Show as we spend time with our best-of-class global network supplier Zayo on another edition of Series 1, straight outta the office. See you there. Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the 186Kloud Show. Today we're going to be talking Series 1, talking about what we're calling straight out of the office. This period of last year, 2020, when businesses, because of this pandemic, have been forced out of the office into remote working locations. You know, we've had two periods this year already where it's been forced on us. It's not been a choice, it's been forced on us. Back in March, everybody was forced home, who could work from home. And then this last month of November, just before we did this interview, people were forced home. And it was an interesting time because our supplier partners that we work with at 186Kloud have got some great experience that we think our community wants to hear about in terms of how they and their customers have pivoted to the cloud. To hear about that and to hear about technologies that we think matter to you and your business now and in 2021 going forward, it's great honour and privilege to be joined today by Zayo and Nick Ashby of Zayo, who's going to be talking to us about Zayo and Zayo products and technologies and thinking. So on that note, I'm going to throw over to you, Nick. And hey, Nick, really, pleased to welcome you to the 186Kloud Show. Tell us a bit about yourself before we get into it.
Fabulous. Really appreciate the invitation, Stephen, and thank you for sharing this with some of your partners. Lovely to talk. So who are we and who am I? So I'm Nick Ashby. I work for Zayo. I'm the channel sales director at Zayo. We are moving forcibly into the channel in 2021. We have been we've been involved in the channel in the US for quite a while. We're a Colorado-based organization. I myself have been in telecoms. I'm an engineer by trade. I did an electronic engineering degree, but I've been in telecom sales or technology sales for over 20 years now. And I've been in organizations such as AT&T, Global Crossing Level 3, Virgin Media, and I've been at Zayo now for nearly 3 years. Predominantly in the past, I've worked in a wholesale environment, but at Zayo, I've predominantly been selling into the enterprise. And now this is a relatively new role for me, moving into the challenge. It's really exciting. Looking forward to working with some partners out there and really showing how our technological solutions can help real business challenges out there in the world.
Good to hear that. And aren't there some real business challenges out there in the world that technology can solve? But before we get into some of the questions that you and I have mentioned, we're really keen to talk about today. Some of the topics. Tell us a bit about Zayo. Where Zayo come from? The technology technologies you sell. The basis on which you build those technologies. You build your proposition, etc. Give us a bit of a flavour and background about Zayo itself.
Sure. So Zayo is currently a private organization. We were public. We went private in March this year, 2020. We're owned by a couple of private equity organizations, Digital Colony and EQT. EQT are based in Sweden, DC are based in California, and they've got a 50-50 share in us. So we're a private organization, and Zayo was set up by Dan Caruso about 13 years ago. And he's still, corporate headquarters is still in Denver, in Boulder and Denver in Colorado. But we have a significant presence now. We have over 200 people in Europe. It's not just a sales office. We have operational people. We have pre and post sales. We have customer support, all based here in London. Our main offices in Europe are in London and Paris. But essentially, we're an infrastructure organization. We own fiber in the ground around the world. We have fiber in the US, fiber in Canada, and we have fiber throughout 7 countries in Europe. Essentially, when Dan set this up, and Dan originally set up level 3. He was at level 3 for about 10, 12 years. And then when he left, it was just coming up to the time, sort of 2007, 2008, when the financial crisis happened. And Dan's an entrepreneur. He's a financier, an entrepreneur. He loves M&A. And basically, Dan saw a bit about the future where metro networks and data in metro networks was going to increase. So he raised some money and he basically built some metro networks or acquired some metro networks, some of them distressed. And then over the years, in 13 years, Zayo has actually grown organically, but we've also made 44 acquisitions.
Wow.
To enhance our portfolio. And really they're infrastructure acquisitions. So we now have a long-haul fiber network, which covers 133,000 route miles around the world. We have metro networks in all of the countries that I mentioned. That on those metro networks, we have 35,000 buildings connected. And we, more importantly, certainly in the partner world, is we have 1,200 data centers lit on our network, on our platform. And across this platform, we operate fiber services. So we will sell dark fiber. If an organization wants fiber and we have some available and it's commercially viable for us to do so, we will actually sell fiber networks. So we've got full command and control over our network. So we will sell fiber. Overlaid on top of that at layer 1, we sell wavelength services. And then moving up the Aussie stack, we light those and we put some managed Ethernet on there, and we get to layer 3 where we operate IPVPNs, SD-WANs, and also IP transit, DIA and IP transit. And just overlaying the IP transit, we actually provide DDoS services as well. So we've got a full suite of network and connectivity products that actually interface to data centers and to the cloud. What I didn't mention was we actually have over 370 cloud on-ramps around the world, and not just to the big 4, but we have 51 cloud service providers fully lit on our network, available for connectivity as and when.
And that's important, in my view. The more cloud providers that you can provide access to for your customers, it's important because it gives them a single, let's call it a single hop connection. If they're on net with you, single hop connection to the cloud providers that they want to work with. So that takes me to my next question. You've given me a really high level overview of the services, but if I'm an IT director, out there in the market today and I'm looking for services, typically what sort of services could Zayo provide me with?
Zayo is really looking at, if we're on net, I believe Zayo will compete with anybody.
Right.
As we know in the partner world, not everybody has a ubiquitous network around the world, right? We have long haul and metro networks. I will be open and honest. A lot of other people actually connect to branch offices sometimes better than us, at lower capacities than us. We're not really in the world of connecting 20 meg, 50 meg to 300 offices around the UK. Right? Our network is really at 1 gig and above, 10 gigabits, multiple 10s, and we're 100 gigabit enabled very easily. And we've actually got some customers that are purchasing terabytes from us, and they're up at U4s, 400 gig plus. So what is a CIO, CTO, IT director looking from us? So we can actually underpin, because we have full command and control of our network. We own the fiber in the ground. We've also got some fiber in the sewers in London in particular as well. So we can actually provide diverse, secure connections between large enterprise sites and data centers. Now, data centers at the moment, predominantly, traditionally over time, before the cloud arrived, people have on-prem data centers and they host their applications. Depending on which area of the business you're working in, there will be regulation, there will be diversity requirements, protection requirements that are needed between applications and data centers. More often than not, large multinationals will have at least 2, if not more than 2, data centers around Europe. They will also have disaster recovery sites. And all of that data, which is hosted in those data centers, will at some point migrate to the cloud, whether that's this year, next year, 5 years or 10 years. The cloud, the facilities, the functionality and the expertise in the cloud environment is only going to increase. So a CIO should really be looking at underpinning all of their applications, software, IP, corporate functions in their network, underpinning it with a decent network. Because applications and software don't work just on their own, on a laptop. More and more, they're getting pushed to the edge, they're getting pushed to data centers. And if the network that actually these applications traverse to get to the data centers, to get to other customers, to get to other vendors, to get to the partners, if that network is not robust enough, fast enough, diverse enough and secure enough, then their office world, their corporate world, their end user experience of their staff, of their customers and their partners will just not be high enough. And as we all know, everybody at home is adopting the cloud because we've all got OneNet on our laptops. We've all got Dropbox, which is a cloud storage service and things like that. These things are actually going to evolve in the business world as well. And whenever we try and load something up to Dropbox and it doesn't work the first time, we just try it again. In the business world, that won't be allowed to happen. Right. People will need to happen the first time, and they will need the networks to allow that to happen.
Right. And what's interesting is, this whole world of the network, it's changing, and it's changing at the speed of, to coin a phrase, light, especially in this last year, because you've got businesses that, as we mentioned earlier, have been sending people home. We're fortunate, right, that this happened in this last year and not 10 years ago. Because if it happened 10 years ago, we would have struggled. We would have struggled to get access to the applications that we need to run our businesses and run our business lives. But that network is changing. So whereas, you could have said, whereas a year ago, an office network really was office to office, that network today is not necessarily just about the office, and it's not going to be in the future. I saw a report last week that talked about how 86%, I think was the figure, of business owners and decision makers reckon that their business operations style in the future, and the future is next year, will not be central, mainly office based. It will be a hybrid of office workers and remote workers. So therefore that network has changed. Businesses no longer need a 6-site office to office network. They need a 6-site office to office network plus a 200-site remote user network. How is Zayo helping businesses pivot from that old style to new style network?
Sure, I will answer your question in a minute. I just want to point out you're quite right in terms of how, and we'll get on to how the network, how the world of work is going to change moving forward. But I think we all learned in those first few weeks of lockdown when we were working from homes ourselves. It was quite clear when we got on Zoom or Teams or Skype for Business or WebEx, it was quite clear you could spot, and it became a joke in our team, on who wasn't investing in their home broadband, right? Who had at best 8 megabit upload speed at home, right? And who the ones who had 60 or 100. We could tell the people who had, and we just spoke about it earlier, who had teenage children at home who were homeschooling for half the day, but the other half they were all on video or downloading or TikTok or Netflix, and we could see that it actually impacted the performance of inbound access of IP from home broadband just into the cloud operations, right? Netflix, Zoom, Salesforce, all of these organizations that we use ourselves at home, perhaps not Salesforce obviously, but are really, they're all based in the cloud, right? Yeah. You're going straight from your home, and we made a joke about how many people weren't investing in their broadband, and it's the same at the back end.
Yeah,
it's the same in business, right? Broadband, all broadband is an access to the internet, an access to a network, a world of networking out there that you then got to go somewhere. If you want to book a holiday, you go to a DNS server for a hotel. But if you want to dial in and start using applications in a business, you have to go through some inbound capacity into where that application is for your business. And organizations who were using local area networking officers, specifically corporate HQs or wide area networks across 2 or 3 branches around a country or whatever, they'd size those networks for the number of people in the offices,
right.
actually how they were accessing their applications in data centers. Or even if that data center was a couple of racks in a basement and they just needed a fiber analyzer. That was all built around what an IT director was building his network against. Turn the clock on 14 days from the middle of March when when was coming and everybody got sent home.
Yeah.
That access to applications and business software moved from a corporate LAN to an inbound capacity from the internet. And I had examples of at least 2 or 3 organizations where they had several thousand, 3, 4, 5,000 people working from home in the space of 2 weeks. And whilst most organizations, this was in the finance sector, I was really geared up towards the finance sector, who were really highly regulated in terms of security and who can access their network. I did have a couple of customers who were really seriously worried about having 3,000 people at home who couldn't work, who couldn't access they could get to email because that's easy, that's low capacity, but they couldn't get to their unified comms platform, or they couldn't get to, certainly couldn't provide any video on their laptops to talk in Teams or meetings and things like that, let alone get access to their CRM system,
right,
or their forecasting system or their finance system to allow them to actually operate their business. So what we did was we certainly allowed a lot of organizations to pivot some of their capacity from their LAN in their office, where we would deliver wide area networking to their office. We would bring high capacity links to their offices or their data centers. And we'd spin that around. That capacity was still there, but these organizations then needed inbound capacity from the internet. We're a tier 1 internet provider, right? We have some of the largest peering connectivity around the world. And because a lot of tier 1 providers have facilities around the world, but we actually own the fiber in the ground as well. And there's not many tier 1 providers that own fiber in the ground. So we were able to create a lot of bespoke inbound connectivity solutions to organizations to really facilitate huge swathes of people coming into their data centers and their applications from a different place, basically from the internet, which is what happens from home.
Right. So what were you doing? Were you firing up VPN licenses?
No, so a lot of organizations that we deal with, actually they like to do a lot of the security themselves.
Right.
We can, if we're on net in a data center, we had one customer in particular. It's a wealth management organization built in London, and they moved 4,500 people at home in 2 weeks. They realized in those 2 weeks that they have 2 main data centers, then they have several hundred gigabits between them on a private network,
right,
a replicated network. They realized that when everybody went home and everybody started dialing in, obviously when you've got 2 data centers, you don't want to go above 50% capacity, because you then can't replicate all the data if one site goes down. So they were exposed. They're highly regulated in the finance sector. So they needed additional capacity. And we spun up 20 gig of IP transit in 8 days. We got them. They asked us for it. They said, we're in a bit of trouble. And this is one thing that Zayo can really work with. If we understand their business and we really understand their urgency to drive, we're small enough and nimble enough to actually create bespoke solutions and implement them really fast. And they came to us and said, we need 20 gig of IP. And 20 gig is not a small amount of IP.
No.
We need 20 gig of IP, and we need it fast, because we have people who cannot talk to each other on video. We have people who cannot get to their CRM system or whatever. And we spun that up in 8 days. Now, we had some services with this customer already, but we had to find the card, we had to get it in, we had to test it, we had to make sure the fiber connectivity to the internet was fine, and make sure we have good capacity on the back end of our peering networks. But all that happened with 8 days. And that just showed that we can adapt large organizations go and put their workforce at home. It's not a problem for us. We can just move their capacity away from their LAN, move it on some inbound IP into their data center. And I think we're going to talk more about this moving forward, but I think the flexibility of being able to move capacity around, make it more agile and portable, is going to be the fundamentals of what's happening in the post-pandemic world as well.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. If we look at an organization, the typical sort of organization you're talking about there, I think this pandemic and this move to remote working or hybrid working, let's call it, is going to change the nature of the network, leading to a new type of network, but new types of architecture, network architecture being built. Let's call it the building blocks of how the network operates rather than architecture, because that's a different topic. But if you imagine, let's say the business, an organization today, I think you used that phrase there where you said the data center in the cellar, in the basement, or in a back room in the building. So they've got a shiny office on the embankment in London, and previously used to house 2,000 people. Today it houses 100 who are just keeping the lights on at the moment. But they've got their data center in there. And as you just pointed out, they've got the other 1,900 people all working from home, remoting in to get access to all of their regulated data, their regulated systems. If you think about that organization and how they're going to change and adapt, what would be the shopping list of products and services that they could come to Zayo for to I guess, revolutionize how they're running their network and their systems today?
So thinking about the shopping list, let's think about who's doing the buying.
Yeah.
I will tell you now, the people it's the CISOs that have been more important over the last 9 months than the IT directors.
Interesting.
Security has been far more important with people at home. They have been having heart failure about all of these people dialing in through the public internet. And if people don't have people have IPsec tunnels because, do you know what? Most salespeople are field-based and they're able to IPsec into their organization, and IPsec gateways are easy to fix, easy to set up, and so on and so forth. But we're a 3,000 person organization. Our sales force is about 500 around the world. We'll only have probably the sales force, the execs, a few customer service people. We'll probably only have 700 or 800 IPsec gateways into our network. Right, but if everybody goes home, everybody needs one. Everybody needs to get in there. So the CISOs are the ones that will be having heart failure. But really, in terms of security, so security is first and foremost. So we are able to, if you're looking at it just on the inbound level, as I mentioned earlier about people scaling up in terms of having inbound IP into their network. Quick and easy way of securing a lot of that data coming in across the internet is DDoS mitigation. Zayo provide DDoS mitigation. We have a cloud-based Arbor service that is labeled as, and we mitigate really well. I had a customer about 3 weeks ago who we actually mitigated 8 DDoS attacks. This is a B2C customer, a retailer actually. Very important their internet, their website stays up because they can't sell things if they don't. So we saw 8 DDoS attacks in the space of about 10 days. And we mitigated them all automatically because they had the Zayo DDoS mitigation service. Mitigated them all automatically. They saw no change in their traffic, their throughput, or anything through their web. There are lots of people who provide DDoS mitigation. They do it several different ways. If people take IP from us, from Zayo, DDoS mitigation is such an easy add-on. It's not that expensive. But do you know what? Organizations and CISOs love it. Everybody talks about DDoS by saying, oh, it's expensive. We really don't want it. We've never had an attack before. But do you know what? You speak to any chief security officer, if he's had an attack in the past, that's the first thing he buys. It's the first thing he buys because it cripples organizations. If these organizations that we're talking about who are putting 3,000-4,000 people at home, if they have a DDoS attack at their internet gateway, forget they've got the capacity there, nobody can get to it. It'll just be flooded with DDoS.
That's interesting.
And as we all know from our personal internets that we've got at home, things like phishing and a lot more people coming through, trying to attack people or embezzle money out of people has increased far more over the last 9 months because they know these people are at home.
Yeah.
A lot of people at home, a lot more people in front of their customers and whatever. So security will be first on the shopping list. So on the back of that, organizations will have firewalls and things like that.
Right.
That they will normally grade their applications. Banks especially will grade their applications. They'll be category 1, 2, and 3, or even more than that. Organizations will probably want to keep hold of their category 1 applications and control the security around that by implementing their own firewalls, their own routing protocols and things like that. So an IT director will always want to keep control of category 1. He will always probably want to keep that in his on-prem data center. But in terms of people moving from home, it really accelerates the potential of adopting the cloud more, the potential of actually using software as a service, X as a service. There's more and more cloud service applications that are being spun up every day, every week. And these are very flexible. They're not necessarily cheap. It doesn't mean that if you move your applications to the cloud, you get a cheaper application service rather than on-prem service. It's just it might just move it from a capex model in terms of purchasing data center space, buying some equipment, writing that down over 5 to 10 years, right through to an OPEX model.
Yeah.
The value will probably still be, the TCO will probably still be the same.
Yeah.
But it gives you a lot more flexibility and functionality. So really, back to your original question, I'm sorry this is a long answer.
No, that's good. We're learning a lot.
In terms of, it'll be security, it'll be making sure you've got the capacity, and where you need the diversity, making sure that is underpinned by the actual infrastructure provider. A lot of people out there say, do you know what, our network is diverse from somebody else's. But we also know, I've been in wholesale for 18 years before I worked in the enterprise. We all know that over the years, people have bought and swapped networks over the years and claimed them to be their own. They've bought them through indefeasible rights of use, IOUs and things like that. Actually, when you look into it, that actually allows you to claim it's your own network.
Right.
If you've bought an IOU from somebody else might be operating it. So I would get the IT director to ask certain people, ask certain vendors who they are, who's operating their network. And if they come back with a managed service provider, say, well, who underpins that network in terms of the infrastructure provider? Because it's those who will have the command and control over it. And if an IT director, a CISO will definitely want control over his network and his security. And he will probably want to know who is the underpinning infrastructure provider. And we're lucky enough that we have fiber in the ground and we can overlay those services on top. So.
Yeah, Nick, what you point out there is exactly why, one of the reasons we work with Zayo. Our whole portfolio, our whole proposition is built around working with suppliers who build their technology out of their own factory. Let's call it that. Mm-hmm. We don't work with retailers who take somebody's factory built product and put their own badge on it. We actually, we undo the bonnet and then we go inside the machine and we want to understand the workings of the machine. And when we get to it, we find a Zayo, and that's why we work with Zayo.
No, that's great. And I'll add to that in terms of saying, we're not arrogant enough to say, we're the best at everything, right? But what we will do is we will tell you when we can do it and we will be good when we do it. We will tell you when we can't do it, and we will potentially introduce you to some of our competitors that say, do you know what, in this area of the country, this area of Europe, this area of the States, you can probably go and get a better service from those people because, do you know what, it might be off net for us and we might not be able to compete. And in those instances, we will happily introduce partners. And, I've been in this industry long enough, so have you. We know people around the business who actually work in these areas. A lot of my customers that I've been selling into for 20 years are now my friends, right? They've moved on and in different areas. And so more than happy to provide introductions. We're not just here as a vendor. We want to be a partner to everybody. We want to grow our business, but we also want to ensure that we stimulate business elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and that itself is gold in our community, because when we speak to end customers, we talk to them about taking them honest advice. aligning them with supplier partners who are honest in their advice as well. And what you just said there, the ability to be transparent with the customer and say, we're good at this and we're not good at that, or we're not good over there, but we're really good over there. That's gold. So, again, our customers really do appreciate that. Again, it's interesting listening to your comments about security. Because security is becoming the new hot topic. It's the thing that could potentially undermine an organisation's effectiveness with their remote working policy. I picked up on the DDoS thing. You and I both worked at level 3. When we were at level 3, DDoS was a massive product for us. But we used to take our DDoS proposition to the retailers and say to them, unless you have DDoS, somebody can bring your website down. But it's interesting that you're saying it's now turning to these bad actors are actually looking at organisations and networks, and they're saying, how can we create reduce the capacity on an organisation's network to make them suffer as well. I find that really interesting. I think that's something that enterprise business need to be aware of. So in addition to the ransomware attacks, the phishing, DDoS is going on in their network as well, and that could be crippling for them.
Well, you don't need, I'm trying to say this in a politically correct way, you don't need to go back too far to look at the front page of the newspapers to see who have had attacks and who have lost their networks. There's some large brands that have been on the front of newspapers in 2020.
Right.
And who haven't had, and if you read between the PR that has actually been pushed out by the responses from the organisations, if you read between the lines about what the journalists have put in the newspapers, it actually comes down to the fact that their networks that they were actually operating, being on-prem data centres or the cloud, were not secure enough. They were not secure enough. And that's why Ofcom has fined these organisations a significant amount of money. Not only have they had brand damage, they've had fines from Ofcom to say, you need to get this sorted. And they then need to invest in getting their security sorted. It's organisations that live and die on their brand. It's front and centre. It's what keeps users up at night, I guarantee it.
It can take, as it said, it can take 10,000 hours to become an expert, years to create your brand and your reputation. But if you have a you have a security issue, it could take seconds to ruin it. And that's and that's what people need to remember.
And if you don't, when I was talking about inbound IP earlier, if you don't, you might have your applications in the cloud, right? And everyone thinks, oh, that's fine. Everybody's just dialing into the internet at home and they're accessing the cloud. But if you don't secure your application in the cloud and the access to that, and your data center is also interacting with some of these applications in the cloud, and that's not secured properly, anybody who gets into the cloud and hacks into the cloud is immediately got a gateway into your data center. And nobody wants that.
No, exactly.
That will cripple organizations.
Yeah. No, it's good point. Really good to appreciate that. Talking about the applications, and having networks that are capable, what do you see as the big applications are that are really driving business network usage these days?
The biggest one is video.
Right.
So the video side of unified comms has just gone crazy. We use Zoom as an organization, but we've also, I remember when I first started in telecoms 25 years ago, and everybody said, oh yeah, there's interoperability is key. That's going to come in years to come. Well, there's still Zoom, there's still Teams, there's still 8x8, there's still Skype for Business, there's still WebEx. So that's 5 I've just reeled off the top of my head that don't interact with each other, right? And everybody's still pushing their own. They do the same thing essentially, right? Everybody's just overlaying different things. So video will be the biggest driver for network growth moving forward, on the top of what 5G will bring. So 5G networks out there are it's not just the air interface to the mobile phone. It's what that then brings back into, allows the less touch organization, the less touch applications and modules.
Right.
So you can start putting in automatic robots and things like that inside buildings or manufacturing plants. You can do autonomous car systems, things like that. And we do a lot more of this in the US actually rather than the UK. but we do a lot of trials. We're actually implementing an autonomous vehicle system around a few of the ports in the US. We can just put up some 5G. We can put up some. We have licenses that we can put up private 5G antennas. We can backhaul it on fiber to the cloud or to the application that's going to control it, and then with some transceivers in some cranes and some mobile vehicles that are in the port is becoming automated.
Right.
And things like taking transport containers off transporters is becoming automated.
So data created by IoT is going to be a big driver of network capacity as well.
So there's 5G and IoT is a driver, video is a driver. One thing I've learned in the last probably couple of weeks actually is something that has been around for a while, but I didn't realize it's going to be as much of a driver as it probably is. And that's really big data.
Yeah.
So big data and analytics is so key to some large multinational blue chips and retailers. Understanding what their customers do, particularly retailers, right? We've all been on our phones, on our laptops, on our emails, where we're, social media, we're all getting adverts. I'm like, oh my God, that is actually tailored to me, because that's actually, I won't mind buying that. And it's the AI is getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and it's the same in the business world as well. But these large organizations have huge data lakes in data warehouses. People like Teradata and whatever, they're out there, they're specialists in hosting these data lakes for years and years and years, buying profiles and understanding CRM systems and customer support, and really what organizations and customers of organizations really want. However, the actual analytics for this data is so much more enhanced in the cloud. But the problem is the application's in the cloud, and it can't get to the terabytes of data that's in Teradata, right? Because it's hosted in the cloud. Everybody knows the cloud is where all the applications are going to live forever, arguably. But whether that's a centralized data center or an edge data center. So somebody now needs to get all of this data in Teradata, in massive banks and banks of servers and storage, and get that data into the cloud so that the analytics can really work on it.
Yeah.
I reckon is going to be a real key driver of data capacity in networks, probably the next 2 years.
I think you're right, but I think the general consumers in the business world of applications and services, we kind of have an understanding of big data. The consumer world has no idea what big data means, but it's going to drive so much of what we do and how stuff is shaped for us. Talking about stuff that's shaped for us, I just want to talk to, I know that there we were talking about, the world of work and the future to a degree, but one of the big topics right now is the way organizations are changing their network infrastructure. There's been we talk about how when the wind blows in America, we catch the tail end of it over here, and it starts to change things here. We're starting to see organizations now really start to look at, do I need an MPLS network? Given that the applications that I'm running on my network are no longer on my network, they're actually in the cloud, is an MPLS network right for me anymore? And is it the right cost structure for me upgrading my MPLS network to cater for what I'm doing on the network? Is there something else out there? And the one big thing that people are talking about today is SD-WAN. About moving to SD-WAN and getting rid of the MPLS network, or downsizing their MPLS network and having a hybrid, and then going for internet connectivity. If you can, tell the audience your understanding and your thinking about where that's going to take the world of businesses, from a network perspective, what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, SD-WAN is great. SD-WAN is the new networking that allows people to secure their network in the same platform as they're routing their network. It enables them to have local breakout to the internet. which will enhance user experiences in certain regions depending on where they are in the world. And it will enable a lot of simplicity and meshing of networks. Certainly, I think SD-WAN's really geared up towards branch connectivity.
Right.
And it will significantly help with that. And, there's any number of SD-WAN providers out there, Cisco being at the top, and then there's Versa, Viptela, all of those further down. It then comes back, it really comes back to the categories of applications that an organization is working.
Yeah.
Does a CISO and does an IT director want all of his applications traversing across an SD-WAN? And if he does, that's fine. He may not have, the applications that he uses may well not be bandwidth hungry, and he may well be happy to control them in his corporate network because his corporate network's not very big. He hasn't got too many people working for him, and as such, he can manage that at his level. He's got maybe one data center, one DR site, a cloud connectivity over there. I think where IPVPN or MPLS still has a play is where the networks get more complex and are higher capacity. So on SD-WAN, you're looking at small routers. You're looking at 1 gig routers, half a gig, 500 meg of traffic in a big office, 100 meg, 50 meg of traffic in a smaller office. But if an organization has got 300 offices around the world, that's going to add up.
Yeah.
So in your core network, you're going to have a lot of data coming in, and you may well have multi-gigs, multi-10 gigs and things like that coming into your core network. You're probably going to have distributed data centers around the world. When you start getting up to 10 gig SD-WAN routers, to be honest, I've never even seen one. I'm not even sure if they're available. If they are, they're probably pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And certainly 100 gig SD-WAN routers, I'm fairly sure are not even out there. So if you're getting, it's really how an organization wants to layer or architect their network. That is going to be driven at the business process layer by the applications that they're going to want. And really it's really down to capacity and security. If you're going to have a core network of your data centers and your key applications that you're going to have control of, you're going to have that at the core level. And chances are that's going to be a private wave network or a fiber network between data centers and maybe some cloud on-ramps in there. And then you'll have an aggregation layer, and then you'll have the branches connecting into the aggregation layer. At that level, SD-WAN connecting into an aggregation layer is great. And depending on the size of the networks around the world, it is new, but it's good technology, and it will work for a lot of organizations. Some people have bought an MPLS network that are maybe 2 years into a 5-year network they've bought. That will still work for them too, because the capability is still there. And chances are they've got some firewalls hanging off the end of it anyway to give them the security. What we're seeing is that organizations are doing exactly that. They have different levels of an IT network. They'll have a core network that they fully control. They know who an underlying infrastructure provider is, and they will secure that themselves, or their underlying infrastructure provider will secure it for them. Then they start building the building blocks on top of that. And when they get to the SD-WAN level, they're at the application and the business process layer because that works for them in the branch offices. So there's a place for everything along the way. Yeah, a hybrid network in an organization can have fiber and waves at the bottom. It can have VPNs in the middle, which is helping with the aggregation layer. And then it can also have SD-WANs that help just with the local traffic in the branches. I still think MPLS and IPVPNs are going to be around for a while, because SD-WAN does save costs in some instances, but that's not the key reason for implementing it. And until SD-WAN may well get cheaper moving forward, and the actual cost savings may become more significant, and that might drive people towards doing it. But MPLS infrastructure is going to come down as well. We actually see organizations building multi-cloud networks using MPLS and VPNs.
Right.
SD-WANs.
Right.
They're keeping that in their core network. So what they will do is they will keep, particularly if they want to go to multi-cloud, because when an organization starts to put applications in several clouds, and those applications we need to talk to each other, hairpinning back in and out of data centers is not an efficient way of transporting data, especially when some of these data centers the on-ramps might be in London and Slough or Frankfurt and Paris, but the actual data centers might be in Dublin or might be in Bremen or might be in Stockholm or something. These hyperscalers are building their data centers miles away from where their on-ramps are. And round trip delays and latency becomes really key. So in terms of a lot of organizations are still using VPNs, are actually connecting multi-cloud networks together. They are connecting between the clouds using a private network, so their own VPN or their own MPLS, or one provided by somebody like us. Because what that does is that reduces the cost, that reduces the egress charges that the cloud providers charge enterprises by taking data in and out. Cloud providers basically charge for the services they provide, the storage of the data, and taking that data out of the cloud. Those are their mechanisms of charging. When you take data out of the cloud from Amazon, for example, to Microsoft, that will have a charge from a cloud service provider.
Right, of course.
We can probably reduce that charge by 2/3 by using a private network.
Interesting.
That's where we see VPNs being used a lot.
Interesting. So there is definitely a play for SD-WAN, but for a lot of these larger organizations, it's about a number of things. It's about having the right capacity. It's about having the right latency. It's about having the right level of global access for your offices, and it's about security. And they're all the things that are our key focus of Zayo.
Yeah, absolutely. The cloud is here to stay. You and I have been around long enough to realize that years ago there was a little bit of a standoff between network providers and content providers, especially when level 3 were doing CDN and things like that, and I were out there and things like that. So there was always a standoff between who's going to win, the network providers or the content providers. Well, I think we can fairly say the content providers have won right now. The cloud is pretty much the biggest thing in the world
you got
right
it.
now. And it's really exciting. The stuff that's happening in the cloud and the entrepreneurship and the applications that are being developed in the cloud is phenomenal. And I encourage anybody to use it, but to use it properly. We all know that organizations haven't adopted the cloud properly. About 85% of organizations haven't. They've got an express route or they've got a bit of IaaS from AWS, and they've spun up some DevOps or whatever in the cloud. But nobody's talking about how clouds are interacting, or how the CRM over there is going to speak to the billing and finance thing over there. A lot of people haven't done multi-cloud, and that's coming. And it's coming in a big way. The fact that it's almost like the dot-com boom of what was that 10 years, 15, 20 years ago, where loads of people said, oh, this is going to be the next big thing. And it was. The internet was amazing. But there's going to be, people have now learned from that, and organizations, software organizations, application developers have learned from that. It's so easy to write an application and to get it in the cloud and to get everyone have access to it, right? One-man bands are doing it. You know, small partnerships, 2, 3, 4 people. Some real geeks out there that can write these applications that are amazing, that enhance life, enhance businesses. But do you know what? Unless you put a decent connectivity around it, it'll fall flat on its face.
Yeah.
It's like if you've only got 2 megabit at home, you can never do Zoom.
Ain't that true? Ain't that true? Nick, this has been fascinating. You know, I could continue to listen to, you know, your views and where Zayo can help. But I think in summary, you know, we kind of touched on it a few minutes ago. Zayo is about access. It's about getting the right latency. It's about access to multi-clouds. It's about global locations, but it's about a conversation as well. Because your point is, you know, that the next thing is the cloud, not necessarily as it is today, but multi-cloud, and how organizations, if they get that right, then they've got their building blocks right. And it sounds to me like a conversation with, you know, one of our if our audience are looking for help with this, Zayo is a good place for them to start, right?
Definitely. Come and talk. Do you know what? We pride ourselves on being customer centric. We want to put the customer at the center of what we do. And we can provide, I'm just talking about our product portfolio now, like just off the shelf sort of the designs we do day in and day out with our solution architects, our biz dev guys. We actually, we're always looking to expand our network. So if an organization is saying, oh, we're looking to, it might be a data center organization that are looking to build a new data center. Tell us where it is. It's 2 years to build and fit out a data center.
Right.
Tell us where it is. We'll tell you if our network's closed. We can tell you which other networks are closed because we know where everyone else's network is as well. We can tell them about the types of capacity that's available in that site. Is it VPN? Is it Clear Channel? What applications do they want to keep private? What are they happy to put over a shared platform? What are they happy just to put over the internet? Because there are some that are suitable for the internet. But more and more, it's about conversation. We're happy to share insight with what we do with other customers. We won't show any names or anything, but we'll see what's happening in the market. Technology is so exciting at the moment. And do you know what? I'm a channel director, right? But I have no clue. I'm out to learn as well. I want to learn more from one partner and share that to shape our story moving forward. If one partner brings us something and then another one the same and then another one the same, we need to align ourselves to better support that. I'll take that back into our business. We are very much a collaborative approach and bespoke, and we won't push. I call it orange maps. We won't push an orange map on you from day one to say this is where it goes. Yeah, we'll give you an idea, but tell us more about your business. Tell us what the challenges are. Tell us, what security have you got? What is your internet capacity? How many people have you got dialing in? How many people have you got using Citrix? What are they using Citrix for? Which applications are you getting to? Tell us all about that. Where do you see your traffic flows going from and to? We have really, I'm not just talking about a network, we have some really funky stuff on the back end of our commercial side, our financial propositions. We can shape CapEx deals, we can shape OpEx deals. We're nimble enough to look, and our investors really want us to do that. We're looking at our rate of return, but we're also looking to we will take balanced risk with some customers if they want to foray into areas that they haven't been to before. And if it's an area we want to get to as well, we'll work with customers to do that. Flat rate, aggregated pricing across the internet, delivering cloud, internet, DDoS across the same ports, in the same sites, in the same enterprise locations. We can do all of that. But we're more interested about how we can enhance their business or business transformation or their cloud transformation. And if we can do alongside that and work as a partner with a partner, then that's what we want to do.
Love that. What a great place to finish. Nick, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thanks for joining us on the 186Kloud Straight Out of the Office show. Till next time, thanks to you, the audience, for listening, and speak soon. Well, that is a wrap, and thank you for joining us on the 186Kloud show. It's been a privilege having your company. If you wish to be notified when we publish our next interview, just go to 186kloud.com/186Kloud-show and hit subscribe. We'll see you next time on the 186Kloud show, where the vendors meet the community.